ground type. It's like the dirt type. They dig, and it's lots of minerals, but not as hard or as tough as rock type, which has its advantages, of course. Rocks are hard and heavy, but dirt isn't as hard or as heavy. So ground type Pokemon tend to be faster than the rockers, and a lot of their moves sort of reflect this too. They are moves that impact the ground, like shaking it, or breaking it, or popping out from it. But I do think ground moves are a bit confusing at times. On the one hand, it makes sense that Pokemon that are flying type or have levitate are off of the ground, and thus immune to ground type attacks. Oh, you better watch out, now the ground is spiky! Too bad I'm fighting a bird.
Haha, what are you gonna do about that?
So in that sense, the immunity makes sense, but other ground-type moves still involve hitting or slapping the opponent. It's no different. Why is a Rhydon able to tackle a bird, but it can't drill run into it? Both are essentially the same action. One just adds its drill horn onto it. It's just game mechanics, I guess. So we'll ignore that. In this video, we're going to go over every ground-type Pokemon move and explain what it is and how it do. And maybe some explanations will be deeper than others. Who knows? So let's dig in. I've used the dig in pun in nearly every video that tangentially relates to ground-type Pokemon, and I am sorry. So I mentioned Drill Run already, so let's start there. Drill Run has the user crash into its target while rotating its body like a drill, or just spinning its drill horn in the case of Rhydon. Critical hits land more easily. It's easy to see why this would be an effective attack. Drills can leave some nasty wounds, for sure critical. Looking at the Pokemon that can learn this move, it all makes sense. All these Pokemon have drill parts, or are even a drill entirely, except for Fearow. That one's interesting. I guess it also learns Drill Peck, so this bird must be really good at spinning. But now, how would a Fearow differentiate between a Drill Run and a Drill Peck? Is it actually running on the ground for this one? I guess that would make sense, since it's a ground-type move. But anyway, it's ground-type because big excavator drills are great for digging through the ground. I guess that's a good enough reason. Now then, similar to the fire-type moves, there are a load of ground-type moves that are all basically the same thing, but with different outcomes and game mechanics. Like how Magnitude is different from Earthquake. Earthquake, it shakes the ground. Magnitude, it shakes the ground. Like what? Magnitude is how you measure earthquakes. What? It's like if you had a move Heat Wave, but then you also had a move called Temperature. Ooh, watch out, he's using Temperature. Anyway, Earthquake has a set power level, and Magnitude rolls a die to determine how powerful it is. It gets something between 4 and 10, but only 9 and 10 are stronger than the move Earthquake. So, it's a gamble. The anime and manga depictions of these moves get the point across well. The user slams their body into the ground and sends shockwaves of power through the earth, shaking and breaking it up in the nearby vicinity. So overall, it's more so just a shockwave from something heavy crashing into the ground, rather than creating an actual earthquake and devastating the entire city. Real earthquakes happen because the ground, which is always moving very, very slowly, suddenly hits a fault and builds up pressure and friction until it suddenly breaks. And now, it's not moving so slowly anymore. It's quite fast, which sends seismic waves through the area as it settles back down. They can be devastating, or they can just knock things off a shelf. It's all about the magnitude, and the magnitude of Bulldoze must not be all that high. It's only got a power of 60, but it's basically the same move. The user stomps the ground hard, which damages everything in the vicinity. So, it's the same thing. But the magnitude of Max Quake is pretty much always set to 11, seeing as it's the ground-type max move. The other being G-Max Sand Blast. This move has Gigantamax Sandaconda blast a load of sand out of its shotgun snout, blasting its enemies and causing a sandstorm. Sand blasters are incredibly powerful tools. They basically take compressed air and mix a bunch of sand in with it, which rapidly sands rust away, among other things, like flesh. You gotta wear so much protection when using these things. But the sandstorm bit of this move is odd because sandstorm itself is a rock-type move, because sand is little rocks. But I guess if that sand is moving fast enough, like from a sand blaster, it's ground type? Game Freak confuses me sometimes. I'm sure the explanation is that Sandstorm is rock type because it's tiny rocks and the Pokemon is using Geomancy to swirl them all around, but Sand Blast was made ground type so that it matches Sandaconda, who is ground type. But then again, all of the other sand-based moves, Sand Attack and Sand Tube, they're ground type, so I don't really know. But Sand Attack is essentially...
Give it! Pocket sand.
The user throws sand in the face of their opponent, which gets sand in their eyes. So now their accuracy is lower because they have sand in their eyes. Their life is a little bit worse now because they have sand in their eyes. Sand Tomb, also known as Sand Hell in Japanese, has changed over the course of history of the franchise. At first, it was stated that it traps and hurts the foe in quicksand for 2 to 5 turns. Quicksand is very dangerous and easy to get stuck in. It's a colloid, which basically means it's not quite liquid, not quite solid, so you sink slowly, especially as you struggle to get out of it, and it's really hard to get out of it. It truly is a sand tomb. But later, the description of the move was changed into, it traps and hurts the target in a whirlpool for 2 to 5 turns. It doesn't even specify a whirlpool of sand. But later still, it's described as the user traps the target inside of a harshly raging sandstorm for 4 to 5 turns. So it's not much different from the move Sandstorm then. Well, I guess it's more of a concentrated sandstorm, so a dust devil. But man, how does one go from just entombing the enemy in quicksand to them just being stuck in a dust devil? Was the sinking in quicksand thing too dark? Shore Up isn't all that helpful of a name. I have no idea what that means. But the Japanese name of the move translates to sand gather. Why not just say that then? What is shoring up? Well, anyway, this is the signature move of Sandygast and Palo Sand. They gather up sand to heal some HP, and if the move is used in a sandstorm, they heal significantly more. So they are basically repairing themselves because they're a sand castle. And I just realized that that's actually what shore up means. When you shore something up, you reinforce its supports to keep it from falling. And I guess it's a pun because a shore is also a beach, which is where you find sand castles. Tectonic Rage is the ground-type Z move. The user burrows deep into the ground and slams into the target with the full force of its Z power. Oh, so it's just a big dig. The move Dig has the user dig underground to hide and protect itself for a turn, and then on the next turn, it pops out of the ground and attacks. And fun fact, if they are underground and the opponent uses Earthquake or Magnitude, well, they pretty much die, because that attack's power gets doubled. Makes sense. Earthquakes often cause mines to collapse, and those things have support beams. A Pokemon using Dig just a second ago? That ground is unstable already. Rototiller, also known as Plow, is pretty self-explanatory. Tilling the soil, the user makes it easier for plants to grow. This raises the attack and special attack of grass-type Pokemon. This is step 1 of farming, plowing the field to aerate the soil and make it easier for plants to grow. Hence, this move helping grass-type Pokemon on the battlefield. Mud. 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 The 4 mud moves work well as ground type because mud is just moist dirt. Mud Slap is just a better sand attack, really. Though it is a lie. The user doesn't slap the opponent at all. It shoots the mud. That would explain the Japanese name of the move, Mud Spray. Sheesh, what were the localizers doing? So the user sprays a bunch of mud at their opponent's face. So it lowers their accuracy because they have mud all over their face and eyes. Their life sucks a little bit more now because they have mud all over their eyes. So this move is just like sand attack, except it also deals damage because they get mud in their eyes. Mud Shot and Mud Bomb are different in that Mud Shot hurls a blob of mud and Mud Bomb hurls a hard-packed blob of mud. Ho ho ho! But also, Mud Shot gets all over the opponent, sticking to them and slowing them down. I feel like the manga depiction of this move differentiates them well, because Mud Bomb now hits the opponent and then explodes and gets everywhere, dealing damage, and a third of the time also lowers their accuracy, because they have mud in their eyes. Mud Sport, also known as Mud Game for some reason, has the user turn the battlefield into a muddy mess. So now there is wet ground everywhere, so all electric attacks have their damage cut in half for 5 turns. To keep the science simple, interestingly enough, sand and mud can be more conductive than water. Not even that deionized stuff. Straight up tap water is less conductive than dirt. So when you add dirt to water to make mud, well, you're just asking for yourself to get grounded. Now salt water, that stuff is extremely conductive because of the salt and minerals within it. Soil or dirt also has a large amount of minerals in it, such as salt. That means when you add the water to the soil to make mud, you are changing its salinity. And salt loves to conduct. Dry, pure sand is extremely resistive, yet when you mix in clay or other minerals, it starts to conduct because of all of those free ions, mainly salt. And if we think about this move as a whole, we can start to see the big picture. The whole idea is that the muddy arena will dampen the effect of electricity. The idea is that the mud might stick to the paws or feet of the other Pokemon, creating a greater surface area to discharge their energy. Many electric types should, in theory, have insulated feet or pads to prevent prevent them from losing their charge into the ground all the time. But the mud is sticky and thick, so it's able to form miniature wires of ions to move their charge into the ground, quite literally grounding them out, thus reducing their electrical power. Science! Next is bone moves. Bone Club has the user, CUBONE or Marowak, club their foe with their bone. Similarly, there's bonemarang, where they throw their bone at the enemy, and through the power of willpower or something, it magically comes back, like a boomerang. It even strikes the foe on the way back, too. Don't know how that works. Captain America magic. And then Bone Rush is basically Bone Club again, except it hits in rapid succession. And also, Mandibuzz and Lucario can learn it. Mandibuzz makes sense, but what is Lucario doing with it? What? How? I guess that's just the power of aura and marketing trying to make Lucario be the coolest guy ever. But question time, why are the bone moves ground type? Well, what else would they be? Not rock, not normal either. There's nothing normal about that. It's not every day you get smacked with a bare femur. When we die, we decompose, and bones take the longest to do that. We also bury our dead in the ground, not the rock. Good lord, could you imagine burying people in rock? But anyway, because of this, the ground is full of bones. It's basically a part of it. In fact, it is. Bones are made up of quite a few different minerals, but mainly calcium and carbon, both of which happen to be common in the ground. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, and all that. We are made of dirt, our bones especially. Spikes, also known as caltrop in Japanese, has the user spread spikes around the opponent's side of the battlefield. So whenever a new Pokemon comes out, they step on them, and it hurts. It's basically like stepping on a Lego, but the Lego is designed to be as sharp and painful as possible. Feet have loads of nerve endings in them, so they're super sensitive, which just makes matters worse. Realistically though, this move is ground type just so that it doesn't affect flying Pokemon or those with levitate, because it hitting them wouldn't make any sense. There's spikes all over the ground, but like, I'm a coughing. What? It doesn't make any sense for me to hit those. Why would I go down there? Fun fact! Caltrops were used in World War I. Planes would fly and just dump a heckin' load of them all over the roads and fields. It really messed up horses and cars who attempted to cross them without sweeping the pathway first. So ultimately, it really slowed them down. But speaking of horses, high horsepower doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The user fiercely attacks the target with its entire body. But then it just shows a horseshoe. Why is this even ground type? Is it because horseshoes get covered in dirt? Aren't all Pokemon feet covered in dirt? Why does Golurk learn this naturally? Or Snorlax for that matter? Like, the move was introduced as the main move for Mudsdale, so that works. But like, I don't know. Why ground type beyond just the mechanics so that Mudsdale gets a stab bonus with it? Based on how this move is described and depicted, I'd argue that this move would make much more sense not ground type. Ha! I could put the knot in the thumbnail again! It's similar to Stomping Tantrum in that regard. Driven by frustration, the user attacks the target. If the user's previous move has failed, the power of this move doubles. What does that have to do with dirt? Are they stomping them into the ground? I mean, they probably are, but what is the move stomp then? And it's quite easy to see how weak the reasoning behind those moves being ground type is when you compare it to earth power, wherein the user makes the earth beneath their opponent erupt with the power of the earth. It's like geomancy, except with dirt. Fissure works well too. The user creates a large fissure in the ground via an earthquake. A massive crack splits as the ground moves in two opposite directions, and the enemy Pokemon may fall into it, leading to a one-hit KO. It's kinda hard to keep battling when the ground eats you. Precipice Blades is essentially earth power again, but it's the signature move of Groudon, the Pokemon that created the land in ancient times, no biggie. Groudon attacks the opposing Pokemon by manifesting the power of the land into fearsome blades of stone. So why isn't it rock type then? Because it erupts from the ground? So Groudon gets a bonus with it? Ugh. The line between what differs rock and ground type moves has only gotten more blurry throughout this video, but thankfully we're almost done. There's only 3 moves left, and all of them are signature moves belonging to Zygarde. Man, I mean, I guess it's no Pikachu, but still. Land's Wrath, also known as Ground Force in Japanese, is basically Zygarde's power incarnate. Zygarde gathers the energy of the land and focuses that power on opposing Pokemon to damage them. It's like Earthquake, but magic. It's using the innate mana-like power of the Earth itself, fitting for the guardian of the ecosystem, guardian of the Earth. Thousand Waves has Zygarde attack with a wave that crawls along the ground. Those hit by it can't flee from battle. Alright, so what is a wave here? In the manga, it appears to be a shock wave, but in-game it appears to be a wave of its own cells. I guess it's magic again to an extent. It launches a shock wave that carries parts of itself out to trap the other Pokemon. And lastly, Thousand Arrows. It's earth magic again, rather than just dirt. Zygarde launches a ton of green energy-based arrows into the air that then rain down upon the opponent. It can even hit flying-type Pokemon, and if it does, they become grounded, so now all ground-type attacks will hit them. Awesome. So, the magical energy or infinity energy emanating from the Earth itself is inherently ground type, apparently, rather than rock. And I think that makes sense. Rock is condensed Earth. It's Earth that has turned into its own thing. Perhaps rocks are too solid to contain the Earth mana in the quantities that the likes of Zygarde can use. Perhaps that is a factor in differentiating ground and rock type attacks. Or maybe I'm just looking too deep into it. How would you describe the difference between the two? And what moves, if any, would you change the type of? Let me know down below, and until next time, please remember to never stop using your noggin.